The dorm room smelled like cheap coffee and lavender candles, the kind that promised calm but never delivered. I was sprawled on my twin bed, laptop burning my thighs, trying to finish a 2,000-word essay on media ethics. My roommate Lena was across the room, sketching in her notebook, her dark hair spilling over one shoulder like ink. She hummed softly, some haunting melody that made my skin prickle. I didn't know then that she wasn't just another art major with a penchant for late-night sketches. I didn't know she was a vampire. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It started with a fight. Not with Lena but with my girlfriend Jess. We'd been together since high school, clinging to each other through the chaos of moving to Boston for college. Jess was pre-med, always stressed, always perfect. But that night her texts were sharp, accusing me of drifting. I sighed, the sound heavy in the quiet room, and tossed my phone onto the bed. Lena looked up, her gray eyes catching the lamplight like they held secrets. "You okay, Riley?" she asked, her voice soft but piercing like she could see through me. I shrugged, rubbing my eyes. Just Jess being Jess. She thinks I'm not present enough. Lena set her sketchbook down, leaning forward. Her movements were too smooth, almost unnatural. "Sounds like she's scared of losing you." I laughed, bitter. "She's got no reason to be. I'm here, aren't I?" But I wasn't. Not really. My heart had been wandering and it terrified me. Jess was safe, familiar, like the worn leather jacket I'd had since sophomore year. But Lena was something else. She was late nights talking about art and philosophy, her laughter like a low hum in my chest. She was the way my pulse raced when her fingers brushed mine passing a coffee mug. I didn't know what it meant, but it felt like betrayal. That night I couldn't sleep. The campus was quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies every creak, every whisper of wind. I heard Lena slip out around 2 a.m., her footsteps silent but the door clicking softly. Curiosity gnawed at me. Where did she go every night? I'd never asked, but the question had been burning for weeks. I pulled on my sneakers and followed her. The air outside was sharp, smelling of damp leaves and distant cigarette smoke. Lena moved like a shadow, weaving through the quad toward the old library, its Gothic arches looming under the moonlight. I kept my distance, heart pounding, feeling like a creep but unable to stop. She slipped into an alley behind the building, and I hesitated, the darkness swallowing her silhouette. Then I heard it, a low guttural sound like a gasp cut short. My stomach twisted. I crept closer, peering around the corner. Lena was there, her back to me, leaning over someone slumped against the wall. The street lamp cast a sickly glow, and I saw it. Blood, dark and glistening on her lips as she pulled back. The person, a guy, maybe a grad student, stumbled away, dazed but alive, clutching his neck. My breath caught, loud enough to betray me. Lena's head snapped up, her eyes locking onto mine. They weren't gray anymore. They were red, glowing like embers. I froze, my mind screaming run but my legs refusing. She wiped her mouth, the motion almost casual, and stepped toward me. "Riley," she said, her voice calm but edged with something dangerous. "You weren't supposed to see that." I stumbled back, my sneakers scraping the pavement. What the hell are you?" She stopped, her expression softening, almost sad. "I'm still me. Just more." My heart hammered, but I didn't run. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, like she was begging me to understand. Maybe it was the part of me that had been falling for her, traitorously, for months. The next morning I skipped my ethics class. My head was a mess, replaying the alley, Lena's eyes, the blood. She was waiting for me in the dorm, sitting cross-legged on her bed, sketching like nothing had happened. The sunlight streaming through the window made her look almost normal, but I couldn't unsee it. "You're a vampire," I said, the words blunt, tasting absurd in my mouth. She didn't look up. "Yeah. How? Why didn't you tell me?" She set her pencil down, her sigh barely audible. "It's not exactly first date material, Riley. Hey, I'm Lena, I'm 22, I'm an art major, and oh, I drink blood to survive." I stared at her, my chest tight. "Do you kill people?" No, her voice was firm, almost offended. I take what I need. They don't even remember it. I sank onto my bed, my hands shaking. Why should I believe you? She met my eyes, and for a moment I saw the Lena I knew. The one who laughed at my bad puns, who left me doodles on my notebooks. Because I care about you, she said softly. More than I should. The words hit like a punch. My face burned and I hated myself for it. I was with Jess. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. But Lena's gaze held me, raw and unguarded, and I couldn't look away. That week was a blur of avoidance and tension. I barely answered Jess's texts, my guilt a heavy knot in my stomach. Lena gave me space, but I caught her watching me, her eyes full of questions she didn't ask. I wanted to hate her, to be afraid, but I wasn't. I was drawn to her, like a moth to a flame I knew would burn. Friday night, there was a party at the art building. I went, hoping to drown my thoughts in cheap beer and loud music. Lena was there, her dark hair catching the strobe lights, her laugh cutting through the bass. I watched her from across the room, my heart doing traitor things. Then Jess showed up. She cornered me by the keg, her eyes red from crying or anger or both. What's going on with you, Riley? You're shutting me out. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The truth was too big, too impossible. I wasn't just questioning us. I was questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. About Lena. Before I could answer, Lena appeared, her presence like a storm rolling in. Everything okay? She asked, her voice low, protective. Jess glared at her. This doesn't concern you. Lena didn't flinch. It does if Riley's hurting. The air crackled and I felt like I was drowning. Jess grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door, but I yanked free. I need air, I muttered, stumbling outside. Lena followed me. Of course she did. The night was cold, the campus quiet except for the distant thump of the party. I leaned against a tree, my breath visible in the air. Lena stood a few feet away, her hands in her pockets, looking more human than she had any right to. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to make this harder for you. I laughed, the sound brittle. You're a vampire, Lena. That's not exactly a small detail. She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. I know, but I'm also the person who stays up with you when you're freaking out about deadlines. The one who thinks you're brilliant even when you don't. The one who's been falling for you since the day we met. My breath caught. The world tilted, and before I could think, I was kissing her. Her lips were cool, tasting faintly of copper and something sweet, and it was like every nerve in my body lit up. I pulled back, gasping, my heart racing. I can't, I whispered, but I didn't move away. Lena's hand cupped my cheek, her touch gentle but electric. You don't have to decide tonight, she said. But I'm here, Riley. Vampire or not. I closed my eyes, the weight of her words settling into me. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stop kissing her. The kiss lingered like a bruise, tender and impossible to ignore. I woke up the next morning with the taste of Lena still on my lips. Her cool touch burned into my skin. My dorm room was too quiet, the lavender candle long burned out, leaving only the faint smell of wax and regret. Lena was gone, probably at her morning figure drawing class, but her sketchbook lay open on her desk. A half-finished portrait of me stared back, my eyes too soft, too vulnerable. I slammed it shut, my heart racing. Jess's texts were piling up, each one sharper than the last. Where were you last night? Why are you doing this? I didn't answer. I couldn't. The truth was a tangled mess. Lena, the kiss, the impossible fact of her being a vampire. It wasn't just about cheating. It was about who I was becoming. Someone I didn't recognize. I dragged myself to the campus coffee shop, hoping caffeine would clear my head. The place smelled like roasted beans and syrup, the hum of conversation blending with the hiss of the espresso machine. I was halfway through my latte when Jess stormed in, her blonde hair pulled tight in a ponytail, her eyes blazing. Riley, we need to talk, she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. Heads turned, but she didn't care. Neither did I, not anymore. I stood, leaving my coffee on the table. Outside, I muttered, leading her to the quad. The air was crisp, the ground littered with crimson leaves. My sneakers crunched as we walked, the sound too loud in the silence between us. "What's going on with you and Lena?" Jess demanded, stopping under a bare oak tree. Her voice cracked, raw with hurt. "I saw you last night. You didn't even try to hide it." My stomach twisted. "It's not what you think," I said, but the lie tasted sour. It was what she thought and more. So much more. "Then explain it," she snapped, her hands balled into fists. "Because I'm losing you, Riley, and I don't even know why." I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come. How do you tell your girlfriend of 3 years that you kissed a vampire? That you're falling for someone who drinks blood to survive? That you're questioning everything you thought you wanted? "I don't know who I am anymore," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The confession hung between us, heavy as the November air. Jess's face crumpled, and for a moment I thought she'd cry. Instead, she straightened, her jaw tight. "Figure it out, Riley. But don't expect me to wait forever." She walked away, her footsteps fading into the rustle of leaves. I stood there alone, the weight of my choices pressing down like a physical thing. I didn't notice Lena until she was beside me, her presence quiet but undeniable, like a shadow that felt like home. "You heard?" I asked, not looking at her. She nodded, her dark hair catching the sunlight. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop. Vampire hearing, you know." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Of course you have super hearing." She touched my arm, her fingers cool but gentle. "I'm sorry, Riley. I didn't want to mess up your life." "Then why did you kiss me back?" I turned to her, my voice sharp, desperate. "Why didn't you push me away?" Her eyes, gray again in the daylight, held mine. "Because I've wanted to kiss you for months. Because you're the first person in a long time who makes me feel human." The words hit hard, cracking something open inside me. I wanted to be angry, to blame her for everything falling apart, but I couldn't. Not when she looked at me like that, like I was the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. That night, I didn't go back to the dorm. I wandered the campus instead. The cold biting at my fingertips, the stars sharp above the city glow. I ended up at the old library, the place where I'd seen Lena feed. The alley was empty now, but the memory made my pulse race. Fear and fascination tangled together. Lena found me there like she always seemed to know where I was. She leaned against the brick wall, her leather jacket blending into the shadows. "You're gonna freeze out here," she said, her breath not fogging in the cold. Another reminder of what she was. "Tell me about it," I said, shoving my hands into my pockets. "The vampire thing. How did it happen?" She hesitated, her gaze distant, like she was looking at something I couldn't see. "It was 1923, she started, her voice low, almost a whisper. "I was 22, studying art in Paris. I fell in love with someone like me now. She offered me eternity, and I took it." I stared at her, the weight of a century settling between us. "Do you regret it?" "Sometimes," she admitted, her eyes flickering to mine. "But not when I'm with you." My heart did that traitor thing again, pounding too loud in the quiet. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the faint copper on her breath, the lavender lingering on her skin. "What happens if I keep kissing you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What happens if I choose you?" Her smile was small, sad. "You'd have to decide if you can handle my world. It's not all moonlight and romance. It's blood and secrets and running from things that hunt me." I swallowed, the reality of it sinking in. "Are you worth it?" She reached out, her fingers brushing my cheek, cool and steady. "That's for you to decide, Riley." The next few days were a haze. I went to classes, turned in my essay, smiled at Jess when we passed in the hall, but it was all mechanical. My mind was on Lena, her story, her touch, the way she made me feel alive and terrified all at once. Jess deserved better than my half-hearted apologies, but I couldn't give her more. Not yet. Lena started opening up, little pieces of her long life slipping out over late-night coffee runs or quiet moments in the dorm. She told me about the 1960s, dancing in underground clubs in New York, about losing friends to time while she stayed frozen at 22. She showed me her sketches, centuries of faces and places, her art the only thing that kept her sane. But there were shadows too. She'd disappear some nights, coming back with faint stains on her clothes, her eyes haunted. I didn't ask, but I wondered. Who was she feeding on? How did she choose? The questions gnawed at me, but I was too afraid of the answers to push. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until she slipped out, then followed her again. This time she went to a dive bar on the edge of campus, the kind of place that smelled like stale beer and desperation. I stayed outside, watching through the grimy window as she leaned close to a woman in a leather jacket, her hand on her wrist. My stomach churned, jealousy and fear twisting together. Was this who she was when I wasn't around? When she came out, I was waiting. Who was that? I demanded, my voice shaking. Lena didn't flinch. Someone who needed to forget, she said simply. I don't hurt people, Riley. I told you that. Then why does it feel like you're hiding something? I snapped, stepping closer. The street lamp buzzed above us, casting harsh shadows. Because I am, she said, her voice low, urgent. There are things after me. Things that don't like vampires who try to live like humans. I'm trying to protect you. My breath hitched. Protect me? By lying. By keeping you out of it. She ran a hand through her hair, frustrated. You think I want you to see this? The blood, the monsters, the mess of my life. Then why stay? I shot back. Why not run like you always do? Because of you. Her voice broke, raw and desperate. Because for the first time in 100 years I want to stay. The words hung there, heavy and real. I didn't know what to say, so I kissed her instead. It was messy, urgent, tasting of salt and copper and everything we weren't saying. When we pulled apart, her eyes were red, not from hunger but from something deeper. I'm scared, I whispered, my forehead against hers. So am I, she said. But I'm not going anywhere. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk between desire and dread. Every touch from Lena felt like a spark, every glance a confession. But the weight of her secret, of what she was, hung over us like a storm cloud. I'd catch myself staring at her in class, watching the way her pen moved across her sketchbook, wondering how many lives she'd lived before me, wondering if I was just a fleeting moment in her endless years. Jess and I were done, though we hadn't said the words. She stopped texting, stopped looking for me in the halls. I saw her once, laughing with a new group of pre-med students, and it stung, but not as much as I expected. My heart was elsewhere, tangled up in Lena's orbit. Lena tried to keep things light, leaving me doodles on my desk or dragging me to late-night art exhibits in the city. But there were moments when her guard slipped, when she'd flinch at a shadow, or her eyes would dart to the horizon like she was waiting for something to come for her. I didn't push, but the questions piled up, heavy as the snow starting to dust the campus. One night we were in her car, a beat-up old Mustang that smelled like leather and oil, parked by the Charles River. The city lights shimmered on the water, and the radio played some soft indie song, all reverb and longing. Lena was quiet, her hands gripping the steering wheel even though we weren't moving. What's out there? I asked, breaking the silence. What are you so afraid of? She didn't look at me, her gaze fixed on the river. Hunters, she said finally. People who think vampires are abominations. They've been after me for decades. My stomach dropped. Hunters? Like actual vampire hunters? She nodded, her jaw tight. They're organized. Ruthless. They don't care if I don't kill. To them, I'm a monster. I reached for her hand, her skin cool against mine. You're not a monster. Her laugh was bitter, barely a sound. You don't know everything, Riley. I've done things I'm not proud of. Then tell me, I said, my voice steady despite the fear curling in my chest. Let me in. She turned to me then, her eyes soft but haunted. I was turned in Paris like I told you, but I didn't tell you about the years after. The hunger was overwhelming. I wasn't careful at first. I hurt people. Not on purpose, but it happened. The confession hit like a punch, but I didn't pull away. That was then, I said. You're different now. Am I? She looked away, her voice barely audible. Every day I fight it. The hunger. The instinct. Being with you makes it easier, but it's still there. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the cold air between us. Then let me help you fight it. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment the world was just us. The hum of the radio, the creak of the old car, the faint scent of her lavender perfume. I kissed her, slow and deliberate, like I could pour everything I felt into that one moment. Her hands found my face, her touch grounding me, and I didn't care about the hunters or the blood or the century she'd lived without me. I just wanted her. The next morning, I woke to a text from an unknown number. Stay away from her. She's dangerous. My heart stopped. I showed it to Lena, who was brewing coffee in our dorm, her hair still messy from sleep. Her face hardened as she read it, her fingers tightening around the mug. Hunters, she said, her voice low. They've found me. Fear spiked through me, sharp and cold. What do we do? She set the mug down, the clink loud in the quiet room. I need to leave. Tonight. No, the word came out before I could stop it. You said you wouldn't run. Riley, they'll kill you to get to me. Her voice was urgent, her eyes pleading. I can't let that happen. Then we fight, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. I'm not losing you. She stared at me, something like awe flickering across her face. You don't know what you're signing up for. I know I love you, I said, the words spilling out raw and true. It was the first time I'd said it, and it felt like jumping off a cliff. Lena's breath caught, and for a moment, she looked almost human, vulnerable, unguarded. I love you too, she whispered, and then she was kissing me, her lips desperate and warm despite her cold skin. We spent the day preparing. Lena taught me the basics, how to spot a hunter, how to use a silver knife she kept hidden in her desk. It felt surreal, like I'd stepped into a movie, but the weight of the blade in my hand was real. So was the fear in my chest, sharp and constant. That night we stayed in the dorm, the lights low, the air thick with tension. Lena's phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. We're coming. My pulse raced, but Lena was calm, her movements precise as she checked the locks and set up salt lines at the door. An old trick, she said, to slow them down. Around midnight we heard it. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, outside our window. Lena's hand found mine, her grip tight. Stay behind me, she whispered. The door rattled and my heart leapt into my throat. Lena moved like a predator, silent and lethal, her eyes glowing red in the dark. The door burst open and two figures stepped in, men dressed in dark jackets, their faces hard. One held a crossbow, the other a blade that gleamed silver. Stay back, Lena growled, her voice low and dangerous. I'd never seen her like this, all sharp edges and raw power. The man with the crossbow smirked. You think you can play human vampire? You're a disease. I stepped forward, my voice shaking but loud. She's not what you think. She doesn't hurt people. His eyes flicked to me, cold and unyielding. You're in over your head, kid. Before I could respond, Lena lunged. It was a blur, her body moving faster than humanly possible, tackling the man with the crossbow. The other swung his blade and I screamed, throwing myself at him. The knife in my hand felt foreign, but I swung it, catching his arm. He cursed, stumbling back, and Lena was there, pinning him to the wall with a strength that made my skin crawl. Leave, she snarled, her fangs glinting. Or I stop playing nice. They didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled out, leaving their weapons behind. Lena slammed the door, her chest heaving, her eyes still red. I was shaking, the knife clattering to the floor. You okay? She asked, her voice soft again, human again. I nodded, though I wasn't sure. You didn't kill them. I told you, she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. I'm trying to be better. I laughed, the sound shaky but real. You're kind of badass, you know that? She stepped closer, her hand brushing my cheek. And you're kind of reckless. We kissed again, the adrenaline making it fierce, desperate. The world outside could wait. For now it was just us, tangled in each other, holding on like we could keep the darkness at bay. The dorm felt different after the hunters' attack, like the air itself was heavier, charged with the memory of violence. I couldn't sleep, my eyes darting to the door every time a floorboard creaked. Lena stayed close, her presence a strange mix of comfort and danger. She didn't sleep. Vampires don't, she told me, her voice casual like she was explaining a late-night study habit. Instead, she sat by the window, sketching in the moonlight, her pencil scratching softly against the paper. I watched her, my heart still racing from the fight. How do you do it? I asked, my voice hoarse. Live like this, always looking over your shoulder? She didn't look up, but her hand paused. You get used to it, she said, though her tone betrayed the lie. You learn to keep moving, keep people at a distance. But you didn't, I said, sitting up. You let me in. Her eyes met mine, soft but guarded. Yeah, and look where that got us. I flinched, the words cutting deeper than I expected. You regret it? No, she set her sketchbook down, crossing the room to sit beside me. Her hand found mine, her fingers cool and steady. But I'm terrified of what it means for you. Hunters don't give up, Riley. They'll come back. The weight of that settled into my bones, cold and unyielding. I wanted to say I could handle it, that I was brave enough, but the truth was I was scared. Scared of losing her. Scared of what her world would do to mine. Then we'll face them together, I said, forcing conviction into my voice. I'm not running. Lena's smile was small, almost broken. You're stubborn as hell, says the century-old vampire. I shot back and we both laughed, the sound fragile but real in the quiet room. The next day, campus felt like a minefield. Every glance from a stranger, every rustle of leaves made my pulse spike. Lena stuck close, her usual swagger tempered by a new wariness. We skipped our morning classes, holing up in the art building's basement studio, where the smell of paint and turpentine clung to the air. Lena worked on a canvas, her strokes sharp and deliberate, while I pretended to read, my eyes drifting to her instead of the page. Stop staring, she said without looking up, a smirk in her voice. Can't help it, I admitted, my cheeks burning. You're kind of distracting. She set her brush down, turning to face me. Her eyes were gray again, but there was a warmth in them that made my chest ache. You're gonna get me in trouble, Riley. Good, I said, leaning closer. You deserve a little trouble. Our lips met, soft at first, then hungry, the paintbrush clattering to the floor. Her hand slid under my shirt, her touch cool against my skin, and I forgot about hunters, about Jess, about everything except the way she made me feel, like I was burning and drowning all at once. We pulled apart when the studio door creaked open, a freshman art student stumbling in with an armful of supplies. Oh, sorry, he mumbled, backing out. Lena laughed, her forehead against mine. We need to find better hiding spots. But hiding wasn't an option for long. That night, Lena got another text. You can't protect her forever. My stomach churned as she showed it to me, her face grim. They're watching us, she said, her voice low. We need to move. Move. I echoed, panic rising. Like leave Boston? For now, she said, already packing a bag. I have a place, a safe house. It's not far. I stared at her, my life flashing before me. Classes, friends, the future I'd planned with Jess. I can't just leave everything. Lena stopped, her eyes searching mine. I know it's a lot, but if you stay, they'll use you to get to me. I can't lose you, Riley. Her words hit like a tidal wave, washing away my doubts. I nodded, grabbing my backpack. Okay, let's go. The safe house was a small cabin in the woods an hour outside Boston, tucked away in a clearing that smelled of pine and damp earth. The air was sharp, the stars brighter than I'd ever seen. Inside, the cabin was sparse but warm, with a fireplace crackling and a single bed covered in faded quilts. Lena moved with purpose, checking windows and setting up more salt lines, her movements practiced but tense. "This is where you go when you disappear?" I asked, dropping my bag on the floor. She nodded, stoking the fire. "One of my places. I've had to move a lot over the years." I sat on the bed, the reality of it sinking in. "How do you live like this? Always running?" "I don't always run," she said, sitting beside me. "Sometimes I fight. Sometimes I hide. But mostly I survive." I reached for her hand, her skin cool but familiar now. "You don't have to do it alone anymore." Her eyes softened and she kissed me slow and deep, like she was memorizing me. The firelight danced across her face, and for a moment, I could almost forget the danger outside. Almost. We stayed up all night talking about everything and nothing. Her life in the 1920s, my dreams of being a journalist, the way the world felt bigger and scarier now. She told me about her maker, a woman named Elise who'd loved her fiercely but left her when the hunters got too close. I told her about Jess, about the guilt that still gnawed at me, about the fear that I was losing myself to this new life. "You're not losing yourself," Lena said, her voice soft but certain. "You're finding who you're meant to be." I wanted to believe her, but the doubt lingered, sharp as the wind howling outside. We fell asleep tangled together, her arms around me, her breath steady against my neck. For the first time in days I felt safe. The hunters found us at dawn. The cabin shook with the force of the door being kicked in, and Lena was up in an instant, her eyes glowing red. I scrambled for the knife she'd given me, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the shouts. There were 3 of them this time, armed with crossbows and blades, their faces set with grim determination. Lena fought like a storm, her movements a blur, but they were ready for her. One fired a bolt, catching her shoulder, and she staggered, blood dark and glistening. "No!" I screamed, lunging at the hunter. My knife slashed his arm and he swore, dropping his crossbow. Lena recovered, tackling another, but the third grabbed me, his blade pressed to my throat. "Stop or she dies," he barked. Lena froze, her eyes locked on mine, fear and fury warring in her gaze. "Let her go," she said, her voice low, deadly. "This is between us." The hunter laughed, his breath hot against my ear. "You think you can play house with a human? You're a walking corpse." I struggled, the blade nicking my skin, a sharp sting followed by the warm trickle of blood. Lena's eyes darkened, her fangs bared, and I saw the hunger flicker in her expression. For a moment I thought she'd lose control. But she didn't. She moved faster than I could track, disarming the hunter and slamming him against the wall. I stumbled free, gasping, as she dispatched the others with a brutal efficiency that made my stomach turn. When it was over, she was breathing hard, her shoulder still bleeding, her eyes fading back to gray. "You okay?" she asked, her voice rough. I nodded, though my hands were shaking. "You're hurt." She glanced at her shoulder, shrugging. "It'll heal. Vampire, remember?" I laughed, the sound shaky but real. "Yeah, I remember." We cleaned up the cabin, dragging the unconscious hunters outside and tying them up. Lena said she'd call someone, a contact who'd deal with them humanely. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to know. As the sun rose, painting the sky in pinks and golds, we sat on the porch wrapped in a quilt. Lena's arm was around me, her touch grounding me. "This is my life," she said quietly. "You still want in?" I looked at her, her face soft in the dawn light, and I knew my answer. "Yeah," I said. "I do." The cabin became our sanctuary, but it wasn't safe for long. Lena's contact, a gruff older woman named Mara who smelled like cigarette smoke and old leather, came to deal with the hunters. She didn't ask questions, just gave Lena a nod and me a long, appraising look before hauling the men away. I didn't know where, and I didn't want to. The less I knew about Lena's world, the easier it was to pretend we could have something normal. But normal was a fantasy. Lena's shoulder healed in hours, the wound closing like it had never been there. But I could still see the tension in her jaw, the way her eyes scanned the trees every time a branch snapped. We stayed at the cabin for 3 days, living on instant noodles and stolen moments. Kisses by the fire, her cool fingers tracing patterns on my skin, her stories of a life that spanned a century. Each one pulled me deeper into her, but the fear lingered, sharp as the winter air. "We can't stay here forever," I said on the third night, curled up on the couch with her head in my lap. The fire crackled, casting shadows that danced across her face. "I know," she murmured, her eyes half closed. "But I wish we could." I ran my fingers through her hair, the strands soft and cool. "Where do we go next?" She sat up, her expression serious. "There's a community a few hours north. Vampires mostly, but some humans too. They've built a safe place off the grid. We could start over there." The word "we" hit me hard, a mix of hope and terror. "You want me to come with you?" Her eyes met mine, raw and unguarded. "I want you with me, Riley. But it's your choice. Always." I swallowed, the weight of it pressing down. Leaving meant giving up my degree, my friends, the life I'd planned. But staying meant risking the hunters, who'd already proven they wouldn't stop. And it meant losing Lena, which felt like losing a part of myself. "I need time," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her hand squeezing mine. "Take all the time you need." The next morning I called my mom. It was a mistake, but I needed to hear her voice, to anchor myself to something familiar. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Her tone warm but worried. "Riley, honey, you haven't called in weeks. Everything okay?" I lied, said I was stressed with classes, that I was fine. But my voice cracked and she knew me too well. "What's going on, sweetheart? Talk to me." I wanted to tell her everything about Lena, the hunters, the way my heart felt like it was splitting in two. But I couldn't. How do you explain that you're in love with a vampire? That your life is a horror movie now? So I just said, "I'm figuring some things out. I'll be okay." When I hung up, Lena was watching me from the doorway, her expression unreadable. "You didn't tell her," she said. "She wouldn't understand," I replied, shoving my phone into my pocket. "Hell, I barely understand." Lena crossed the room, her movements slow, deliberate. "You don't have to do this alone, Riley. Whatever you decide, I'm here." Her words were a lifeline, but they also scared me. Because choosing her meant choosing a world of blood and danger. A world I wasn't sure I could handle. We left the cabin that night, driving north in Lena's Mustang, the road stretching dark and endless before us. The radio was off, the only sounds the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of wine through the trees. Lena drove with one hand, the other resting on my knee, her touch a quiet reassurance. "Tell me about this community," I said, needing to fill the silence. "It's small," she said, her eyes on the road. "A few dozen people, mostly vampires who want to live quietly. They've got a farm, solar power, no hunters for miles. It's not perfect, but it's safe." "Safe," I echoed, the word feeling foreign. "Will I fit in?" She glanced at me, her smile soft. "You're with me. That's enough." I wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at me. What if I couldn't handle her world? What if I lost myself in it? We arrived at dawn, the sky a soft gray as we pulled up to a cluster of cabins surrounded by dense forest. The air smelled of pine and wood smoke, and a few figures moved in the distance, their steps silent, almost ghostly. Lena parked and a woman approached, tall with short silver hair and eyes that seemed to see right through me. "Lena," the woman said, her voice warm but guarded. "You brought a guest." "This is Riley," Lena said, her hand on my back. "She's with me." The woman, Clara, she introduced herself, nodded, her gaze lingering on me. "Welcome. But you should know, human, this life isn't easy." "I'm starting to get that," I said, forcing a smile. Clara led us to a small cabin, its walls lined with books and sketches, the air warm with the scent of cedar. Lena seemed to relax here, her shoulders loosening, her smile more genuine. Over the next few days I met the others. Vampires with stories as old as Lena's. Humans who'd chosen this life for love or survival. They were kind but distant, like they were waiting to see if I'd stay. Lena showed me the ropes, how to blend in, how to avoid drawing attention. She taught me more about her world. The way vampires could sense each other. The way bloodlust could creep up like a storm. She was patient, but I could see the worry in her eyes, the fear that I'd change my mind. One night we sat by a bonfire, the flames crackling as the community gathered. A vampire named Sam played a guitar, the notes soft and mournful, while others talked in low voices. Lena's arm was around me, her body cool but comforting against mine. I leaned into her, the firelight reflecting in her eyes. "Do you miss it?" I asked. "Your old life before you were turned?" She was quiet for a moment, the fire popping in the silence. "Sometimes," she said. "I miss the simplicity, but I don't miss the loneliness. Not anymore." Her words hit deep, and I turned to her, my hand finding hers. "I'm scared, Lena, but I'm here." She kissed me, soft and slow, the world fading to just us. The fire warmed my skin, but her touch warmed something deeper, something I hadn't known I needed. The peace didn't last. A week later, Clara called a meeting, her face grim. "Hunters," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "They've been spotted nearby. We need to prepare." Lena's hand tightened on mine, her jaw set. "How close?" "Too close," Clara said. "We move tomorrow." Panic surged through me, but Lena's grip kept me grounded. "We'll be okay," she whispered, though her eyes betrayed her doubt. That night we lay in bed, the cabin quiet except for the distant howl of wind. I traced the lines of her face, memorizing every detail. "What if we can't outrun them?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Then we fight," she said, her voice steady. "Together." I nodded, my heart pounding. I didn't know if I was ready, but I knew I couldn't let her go. Not now, not ever. The community moved like a well-oiled machine, packing up essentials under the cover of darkness. The air was thick with tension, the scent of pine mingling with the sharp tang of fear. Lena and I helped load crates into trucks, her strength making quick work of heavy boxes while I fumbled with ropes and tarps. Clara barked orders, her silver hair glinting in the moonlight, her voice steady despite the urgency. "Where are we going?" I asked Lena as we worked, my breath fogging in the cold. "Further north," she said, tossing a duffel into the truck. "There's another safe spot in Maine. Deeper in the woods, harder to track." I nodded, though the idea of running again made my chest tight. I'd left Boston behind, my classes, my old life, but the hunters were relentless, a shadow we couldn't shake. Lena caught my expression and paused, her hand brushing my arm. "You're doing great," she said softly. "I know this is a lot." I forced a smile, her touch grounding me. "I'm just trying to keep up." Her eyes softened and she leaned in, kissing me quickly but fiercely, the taste of her lips a brief escape from the chaos. "You're tougher than you think, Riley." The convoy left at dawn, a line of trucks and vans winding through the forest. Lena and I rode with Clara, the cab of her truck smelling like coffee and old vinyl. The radio was off, the only sounds the rumble of the engine and the occasional crackle of Clara's walkie-talkie. I stared out the window, the trees blurring into a green haze, my mind racing. What was I doing? I was a journalism major, not a fugitive. But every time I looked at Lena, her profile sharp against the gray sky, I knew why I was here. Clara glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "You sure about this, human? You can still walk away." Lena's jaw tightened, but I spoke before she could. "I'm sure," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm with her." Clara's lips twitched, almost a smile. "You've got guts. I'll give you that." We reached the new safe house by nightfall, a sprawling compound hidden in a valley, surrounded by dense pines and jagged cliffs. The air was colder here, sharp with the promise of snow. The community settled in quickly, unpacking and reinforcing the perimeter with salt and iron. Vampire tricks, Lena explained to ward off hunters. I helped where I could, my hands blistered from hauling wood. My body aching but my resolve firm. That night, Lena and I shared a small room in the main house, its walls rough-hewn and smelling of cedar. We lay on a narrow cot, her body curled around mine, her breath cool against my neck. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. "Tell me something good," I whispered, needing to hear her voice. "Something from your past that doesn't hurt." She was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing circles on my wrist. "In the 70s I lived in San Francisco," she said, her voice soft, almost dreamy. "I ran a little art gallery, sold paintings to hippies and dreamers. There was this one night, a full moon, and we danced on the roof, all of us, humans, vampires, didn't matter. The air smelled like jasmine, and the music, it was like the world was singing." I smiled, picturing her there, young and free despite her age. "I wish I could have seen you then." "You're seeing me now," she said, kissing my temple. "That's better." I turned to face her, our lips meeting in the dark, soft and slow. Her hand slid under my shirt, her touch sending shivers through me. I wanted to lose myself in her, to forget the hunters and the fear. But a sharp crack outside snapped us back to reality. Lena was up in an instant, her eyes glowing red as she peered through the window. "Stay here," she whispered, slipping out the door before I could protest. I didn't listen. I grabbed the silver knife she'd given me and followed, my heart pounding. The compound was quiet, too quiet, the air thick with the scent of frost and something metallic, blood. I found Lena in the clearing, facing two hunters, their crossbows trained on her. Clara was there too, her own blade drawn, but they were outnumbered. "Riley, go back," Lena hissed, her voice sharp with fear. But I couldn't. I stepped forward, the knife trembling in my hand. "Leave her alone," I said, my voice louder than I expected. One of the hunters laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You're in deep, girl. You think you can save her?" "I'm trying," I shot back, stepping closer to Lena. Her eyes flicked to me, a mix of pride and panic. The fight erupted fast. Lena moved like lightning, disarming one hunter while Clara tackled the other. I swung my knife, more instinct than skill, catching the first hunter's arm. He swore, dropping his crossbow, and Lena finished him with a swift blow to the head. Clara dispatched the other, her movements precise, brutal. When it was over, Lena grabbed me, her hands shaking. "What the hell were you thinking?" "I was thinking I love you," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm not letting you fight alone." Her eyes softened and she pulled me close, her lips brushing my forehead. "You're gonna be the death of me, Riley." Clara snorted, wiping blood from her blade. "Get a room, you two. We've got work to do." The next day, the community was on edge, fortifying the compound and setting up patrols. Lena and I helped, but the tension between us was different now, less fear, more certainty. We were in this together, no matter what came next. That night, we sat on the roof of the main house, the stars sharp above us. The air smelled of snow, and Lena's hand was warm in mine, despite her cold skin. "You ever think about forever?" I asked, my voice quiet. She looked at me, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Every day. But forever's only worth it if it's with you." My heart swelled and I kissed her, the world fading to just us. The cold air, the soft creak of the roof, the taste of her lips. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I'd fight for it, for her. The hunters didn't come again for weeks, but the threat hung over us, a constant shadow. Lena taught me more about her world. How to spot a hunter's trap, how to move quietly, how to trust my instincts. I was still human, still fragile, but I was learning. And with every lesson I felt closer to her, like we were building something unbreakable. One morning Clara pulled me aside, her expression serious. "You're changing, Riley. You're not the scared kid who showed up here." "Is that a good thing?" I asked, half joking. She smiled, a rare softness in her eyes. "It's a brave thing. But be careful. Love like yours, It's powerful, but it makes you a target. I nodded, her words sinking in. I was a target now, but so was Lena. And we'd protect each other, no matter the cost. The main compound became home, in a strange, unsteady way. The days blurred into a rhythm of survival. Patrols, training, stolen moments with Lena by the fire or under the stars. The air was always cold now, the ground dusted with snow, the scent of pine and wood smoke a constant backdrop. I learned to handle a knife with confidence, to move silently through the woods, to read the signs of danger in the rustle of leaves or the snap of a twig. Lena was my teacher, her patience endless, her touch a reminder of why I was here. But the hunters were never far from my mind. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the trees made my pulse spike. Lena felt it too, though she hid it better, her eyes scanning the horizon like she was waiting for the inevitable. We didn't talk about it, but the fear was a third presence in our bed, curling between us in the quiet hours. One night, as we lay tangled in blankets, the wind howling outside, Lena's voice broke the silence. "If something happens to me," she said, her tone low, "promise you'll keep going." I sat up, my heart lurching. "Don't say that." She propped herself on one elbow, her eyes serious, almost human in the dim light. "I need to know you'll be okay, Riley. You're human. You have a life to live." "I don't want a life without you," I said, my voice cracking. The words were raw, too big for the small room, but they were true. She reached for me, her hand cool against my cheek. "I'm not going anywhere if I can help it. But you need to be ready." I kissed her, fierce and desperate, like I could hold her to this world with my lips alone. Her hand slid down my back, pulling me closer, and for a moment the fear dissolved, replaced by the heat of her touch, the taste of her breath. The attack came at midnight a week later. The compound's alarms, a series of bells rigged in the trees, rang out sharp and frantic. Lena was up in an instant, her eyes glowing red, her fangs bared. I grabbed my knife, my hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding my veins. The community mobilized fast, vampires and humans moving as one, their training kicking in. Outside, the snow was falling soft and silent, a cruel contrast to the chaos. The hunters were different this time. More organized, more ruthless. There were at least a dozen, armed with crossbows, silver blades, and something worse, vials of a dark liquid that burned the vampires on contact. I saw Sam, the guitarist, go down screaming as the liquid seared his skin. Lena fought like a force of nature, her movements a blur as she disarmed one hunter after another. I stayed close, my knife flashing, my heart pounding. A hunter lunged at me, his blade grazing my arm, and I stumbled, pain searing through me. Lena was there in an instant, slamming him into the ground, her eyes wild with fury. "Stay with me," she growled, pulling me to my feet. We fought back to back, the snow turning red around us. Clara was a whirlwind, her blade cutting through the hunters with a precision that was almost beautiful. But there were too many. I saw a hunter aim a crossbow at Lena, the bolt gleaming silver, and I didn't think, I just moved. I tackled her out of the way, the bolt grazing my shoulder instead. Pain exploded, hot and sharp, and I hit the ground gasping. Lena's scream was raw, animalistic as she turned on the hunter, her fangs sinking into his neck. He dropped, lifeless, and she was at my side in an instant, her hands shaking as she pressed them to my wound. "Riley, stay with me," she said, her voice breaking. "Please." "I'm okay," I gasped, though the pain said otherwise. "Just don't let go." She lifted me, carrying me back to the main house as the battle raged on. Clara and the others held the line, their shouts and the clash of metal fading as Lena set me on a cot inside. She tore my sleeve, her hands gentle but urgent, examining the wound. It was shallow, but the silver had left a burning ache that made my vision blur. "You're gonna be fine," she said, though her eyes were wet, a rare vulnerability. "I'm not losing you." I reached for her, my fingers weak but desperate. "You won't." She kissed me, her lips trembling, the taste of blood and snow mingling with her tears. The world spun, but she was my anchor, her touch keeping me here. The community repelled the hunters, but at a cost. Sam was gone, and 2 others were badly injured. The compound was damaged, windows shattered, walls scorched. Clara called a meeting at dawn, her face etched with exhaustion. "We can't stay here," she said, her voice heavy. "We move again tonight." Murmurs rippled through the group, but no one argued. Lena held my hand, her grip tight, my bandaged shoulder throbbing under her touch. I was still human, still breakable, and the weight of that was heavier than ever. As we packed, Lena pulled me aside, her eyes searching mine. "You don't have to keep doing this," she said. "You could go back, start over. Be safe." I shook my head, anger flaring. "Stop trying to push me away. I chose you, Lena. I'm not going anywhere." Her smile was small, fragile. "You're the bravest person I know. And you're the most stubborn vampire I know." I shot back, pulling her into a kiss. It was soft, grounding, a promise we didn't need to speak. We left at dusk, the convoy smaller now, the mood somber. Lena and I rode in the back of a van, my head on her shoulder, the hum of the engine lulling me into a restless sleep. I dreamed of blood and snow, of Lena's eyes glowing red, of a life where we didn't have to run. When I woke, we were parked at a new safe house, this one on the coast, the air sharp with salt and seaweed. The house was old, weathered by storms, but it felt like a fresh start. Lena helped me out of the van, her arm around me, and we stood by the ocean, the waves crashing against the rocks. "This could be home," she said, her voice soft, hopeful. I looked at her, the wind tangling her hair, and I knew she was right. Not the house, not the coast, but her. She was my home no matter where we went. The days that followed were quiet, a fragile peace. I healed, my shoulder scarring but functional, a reminder of what we'd survived. Lena and I grew closer, our love a quiet strength against the uncertainty. We'd sit on the cliffs, watching the waves, talking about a future we both wanted but weren't sure we could have. One night, as the moon hung low over the ocean, Lena turned to me, her eyes serious. "There's something I need to ask you," she said, her voice barely audible over the waves. My heart skipped. "What? If you could live forever, would you?" The question hung between us, heavy and impossible. I thought of her life, the endless running, the hunger, the weight of a century. But I also thought of her laugh, her touch, the way she made me feel alive. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know I want you. Forever, or as long as I've got." She kissed me, her lips cool and certain, and for the first time I wasn't afraid of the future. Whatever it held, we'd face it together. The coastal safe house became our refuge, a place where the roar of the ocean drowned out the echoes of our past. The air was sharp with salt, the cliffs rugged and wild, mirroring the life Lena and I were building. We settled into a rhythm. Days spent helping the community rebuild, nights wrapped in each other, the crash of waves a constant lullaby. My shoulder healed, the scar a faint reminder of the fight that had brought us here. But the hunters were never far from my mind, a shadow that lingered in the quiet moments. Lena was different here, lighter, like the sea air had washed away some of her burdens. She'd sketch by the cliffs, her pencil capturing the curve of the horizon, the glint of moonlight on the water. I'd watch her, my heart swelling with a love that felt too big for my body. But her question about forever echoed in my mind, a weight I couldn't shake. Could I live her life? Could I give up my humanity for her? One morning as we walked along the shore, the sand cold under my bare feet, I asked her the question that had been burning since that night. "If I said yes to being like you, what would it be like?" Lena stopped, her eyes on the waves, her hair whipping in the wind. "It's not like the movies," she said, her voice low. "It's pain at first. The change is brutal. And the hunger. It's always there, like a pulse you can't ignore. But it's also freedom. Time stretches out endless. You see the world change, but you stay." I swallowed, the weight of it settling in. "Would you want that? For me to be like you?" She turned to me, her eyes soft but serious. "I want you, Riley. Human vampire doesn't matter. But I won't lie, it'd be easier if you were like me. No more running to protect you. Just us together. The idea was terrifying, but it also sparked something in me, hope maybe, or something close. I took her hand, her skin cool against mine, and kissed her, the salt of the sea mingling with the taste of her lips. I'll think about it, I said, and she nodded, her smile small but real. The community thrived in its new home, but the peace was fragile. Clara kept us on high alert, her patrols scanning the cliffs and the woods beyond. I trained harder, my body growing stronger, my instincts sharper. Lena taught me to fight like a vampire, to use speed and surprise, to trust the knife in my hand. I wasn't one of them, not yet, but I was part of their world now, bound to it by love and blood. One night, as we sat by the fire in the main house, Clara dropped a bombshell. "We've got word from a contact," she said, her voice grim. "The hunters are regrouping. They're planning something big." Lena's hand tightened on mine, her jaw set. "How big?" "Big enough to wipe us out," Clara said. "They've got new weapons, new allies. We need to end this or we'll be running forever." The room went quiet, the fire's crackle the only sound. I felt the weight of every eye on me, the human among them, the weak link. But I wasn't weak anymore. I'd fought, I'd bled, and I'd chosen this life. "What's the plan?" I asked, my voice steady. Clara's eyes met mine, a flicker of respect in them. "We take the fight to them. Hit their base before they hit us." The plan was risky, borderline suicidal. The hunters' base was a warehouse in a nearby town, fortified and crawling with weapons. But Clara was right, if we didn't act they'd come for us. Lena and I spent the next day preparing, sharpening blades, packing supplies, memorizing the layout Clara's contact had provided. My hands shook, but Lena's presence kept me steady, her touch a reminder of what we were fighting for. As we loaded into the vans that night, Lena pulled me aside, her eyes fierce. "If things go wrong, you run. Promise me." "No," I said, my voice firm. "We're in this together." She sighed, her forehead against mine. "You're impossible." "You love it," I said, kissing her hard, the taste of her grounding me. The warehouse was a fortress, its walls cold and gray under the moonlight. We moved silently, the community splitting into teams to cover the exits. Lena and I were with Clara, slipping through a side door, the air inside heavy with the smell of oil and metal. My heart pounded, my knife slick in my sweaty palm. The hunters were waiting. The fight was chaos, crossbows firing, blades clashing, screams echoing off the walls. Lena was a blur, her strength terrifying and beautiful, but the hunters were prepared. They had traps, nets laced with silver, vials of that burning liquid. I saw Clara take a hit, her arm sizzling, but she kept fighting, her blade relentless. A hunter came for me, his crossbow aimed at my chest. I dodged, my training kicking in, and drove my knife into his shoulder. He fell, cursing, and Lena was there, pulling me behind a crate. "Stay close," she hissed, her eyes glowing red. But then I saw it, a hunter with a vial aiming for Lena's back. I didn't think. I tackled him, the vial shattering on the floor, the liquid burning my arm. I screamed, the pain white-hot, but Lena was there, dispatching the hunter with a snap of his neck. "Riley," she cried, her hands on my face, her eyes wild. "Why do you keep doing this?" "Because I love you," I gasped, the pain blurring my vision. "And I'm not losing you." She kissed me, desperate and fierce, the chaos fading to just us. The fight ended as quickly as it began, the hunters overwhelmed by the community's ferocity. We'd won, but the cost was high: wounds, losses, a reminder that this life was never safe. Back at the safe house, my arm bandaged and throbbing, Lena and I sat on the cliffs, the ocean stretching endless before us. The air was cold, the stars bright, and her hand was warm in mine despite everything. "We did it," I said, my voice hoarse. "We're free. For now," she said, her smile bittersweet. "But it's always gonna be a fight." I looked at her, her face soft in the moonlight, and I knew my choice. Then we fight together. Forever. Her eyes widened and she pulled me close, her lips finding mine. The kiss was everything: hope, fear, love. A promise of a life we'd carve out no matter the cost. I didn't know if I'd ever become like her, but I knew I'd stay, human or not, for as long as I had. As the waves crashed below, I felt it. A sense of home, not in the place but in her. We'd face the hunters, the hunger, the endless nights,